Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. So Auburn is actually gaining a little bit of ground with recruiting now the number 21 class in the country. I think that's a pretty good deal because considering, Auburn really has to have some leverage in recruiting, especially when you look at, things like Big Cat Weekend and campus visits and all those different types of things that have to go on Auburn's side. Because when you look at who Auburn is up against recruiting-wise, in the Southeast, it gets pretty nasty with Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Florida State, Clemson, all of those teams in close proximity. Things get a little tricky, especially when you talk about Auburn, who is kind of a Southeastern brand, but really not a national brand when it comes to football. When you compare it to, say, Michigan and, of course, the in-state rival with Alabama and even LSU with the Nike brand and Oregon and teams like those, it gets a little tricky for Auburn recruiting-wise. And I want to give a big shout-out to the coaching staff for actually being creative and expanding their territory with recruiting and getting some pretty quality guys in there, especially with the recent recruits with the defensive tackles, Marquise Robinson and the kid out of Kansas City. I think that's some pretty solid recruiting there. So what does Auburn need at this point? The recruitment of JaQuincy McKinstry out of Pinson Valley High School, that's going to be huge for Auburn to really land him, because it would have been a little while since Auburn has landed a really, really, truly elite cornerback, especially from a statistical standpoint. So that would be a huge game for the Tigers. Also, as we noted before, Auburn is lagging behind with wide receiver recruits. Not a single wide receiver recruit in this particular class. Cody Burns is definitely behind in this class, and you really don't want to let a year go by without replenishing the wide receiver core, because that's going to have a lot to do with your quarterback recruiting as well. Because the quarterback's going to want to know, well, who am I going to throw the football to? And you definitely don't want a situation where you're throwing the football to Will Hastings, no disrespect, but he wasn't an elite receiver, but he was actually a go-to guy. This is a guy that wouldn't have started probably on any SEC team anywhere. Even Vanderbilt might not have started there. And that's a bold statement to make, but that's just being honest. He wasn't recruited for the position even. He was a walk-on. So I think as we look at this moving forward, Auburn has done a great job of recruiting this year. Still have to continue to push the envelope as far as getting some of these elite recruits. And how do you do that? You look at the Auburn basketball team. A few years back, before the Bruce Pearl era, there was no way possible any high-end five-star recruit, some of the best basketball players in the country, are not looking to come to a school like Auburn. But you take your behind to the Final Four, and you go to the playoff, you win consecutive SEC championships, you beat blue bloods like North Carolina, Kansas, and Kentucky in the same year, you playing toe-to-toe with with Kentucky on a rebuilding year, then of course, you're going to start to attract some of the most talented basketball players in the country. And that's what Auburn has to understand. And that's why Gus Malzahn has to quit letting these opportunities, slip by. You lose the opportunity with the national championship. Because, if Auburn wins the national championship in 2013, a lot of what we're talking about is not even in question. Because you talk about winning 2 national championships in a 3-year span. That's unheard of for Auburn. That could have created a slick dynasty for Auburn, but missed the opportunity. And those opportunities are ones that Gus Malzahn and his staff cannot continue to miss. Missing the opportunity to beat LSU a couple of years ago. Missing the opportunity to beat LSU in the height of one of the best runs in LSU history. missing the opportunity to beat them there. The opportunities, you got to take advantage of them. And that's something Auburn has to look at. You look at this season, you talk about a 10-game SEC field schedule. I think if the season can actually play out, this probably will be one of the more entertaining seasons in a long time. Auburn, chances are, going to be facing Missouri and South Carolina as the add-on for the SEC, the SEC schedule. So we'll be looking at that to see how that plays out. I'm thinking that the SEC schedule will probably roll out in the next couple of weeks. The season has actually been pushed back to September the 26th. And during that particular time, that's plenty of time for practicing and to get, players kind of in relatively good shape, because when you talk about playing an all SEC schedule, definitely a rigorous schedule, definitely going to be a gauntlet for a lot of teams, especially Auburn. Auburn has usually the toughest slate anyway, guaranteed to play LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia. The reason why those are significant is because those are the teams that recruit very, very well. And that's something that we definitely have to look at. Also, I think this is really going to be a nice test for Bo Nix. Bo Nix is going to be facing elite talent every week, and we're going to see how well he progresses along with the offensive line. I mean, the offensive line has to be better than last year, even if they were absolutely terrible. And I think individually they were okay, but as a unit, they really didn't do too well. Didn't move the ball very well. Auburn's running game really suffered. Passing game definitely suffered. So we're going to see how all of this turns out. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.